Well, as we close out the chilly December 2024 season and roll into January 2025, I actually have out here the Assistant Public Works Director, Jim Ferratti, and Second Ward Councilman Dennis Espinoza. So we're out here in the parking lot of Sterling Village as our senior age-restricted housing, and we've been involved in a massive undertaking out here, and as some of our other government buildings, which we're going to explain, to install energy efficiencies and solar upgrades. So I know I'm going to have a few questions of you, Jim, and I know Councilman Espinoza will. So what is actually happening out here, and what can the residents expect, and how is that good for the township residents?
Okay. It's a multifaceted question. So we have installed behind us is a large steel canopy structure. There's a steel canopy over each row of parking. And on each canopy, we will have a installation of solar panels, basically making one large array. The benefit to the residents is that they now have a form of covered parking, which is a huge benefit.
Well,
their vehicles will be in the shade.
I know Councilman Espinoza is very happy about that because this is his ward, and this way he doesn't have to go and shovel the snow off of some of the residents' cars now.
Right. To the larger taxpayer in Piscataway, the benefit is a fairly large reduction in electrical cost to the township for operating this building. Obviously, there's a cost with installing and operating the solar, but I feel and the math runs out, in 20 years, we will be in a very good place with our own energy production through the solar array.
That's great. Go ahead.
What's the percentage of that?
Overall, the entire project, we're looking at like a 63% reduction in energy usage, which we should see a break even within that 20-year time span.
And the significance of that is that because energy markets are one of the most volatile markets in the world, you never know. Let's just put it this way, it's very rare that it goes down.
Right.
So,
and we're not really just talking about the benefit to the township either. We are generating power to reduce the strain on the grid. So as electric vehicles become more of a thing and electronics as a whole are taking more demand, we're helping to reduce that demand on the grid by taking our buildings partially off of it.
So why don't you explain out here, it looks like there's some panels and not, or whatever, so
right now we are in the middle of the installation of panels. We expect that to be done within the next week or so. The contractor is currently working on finalizing this canopy here, and then we should essentially be done.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to also thank the residents of Sterling Village for putting up with this inconvenience.
Absolutely.
It's been a massive undertaking out here between driving the pylons. I guess some of them went down 15 feet deep, which is pretty impressive to watch the drilling equipment that was out here while they were drilling and pouring the footings.
So I know you were out here.
Yeah.
We did 54 footings in this parking lot, and that required moving and relocating the residents. And again, I thank them very much. Everyone has been so cooperative to get this done, and it has actually been a positive undertaking. We didn't really receive any issues. The work went relatively smoothly, and basically we're in the end stretch now.
Well, one of the other things, and I know Councilman Espinoza is very into IT, we'll have all new lighting underneath the canopies, and then security cameras out here in the parking lot.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. Like, once we get these panels up and running, you said 1 week. How fast do you turn it on?
So the installation will be done in a week. The panels we anticipate will be on first quarter of 25. Okay. The optimist in me is saying by February, but I want to give them to the end of March realistically to get the appropriate switchgear work done in the mechanical room and get the meter from PSE&G to get these panels activated.
Now, explain to the general public and lay person, what is a switchgear?
The electrical switchgear is basically the components in the mechanical room that tie in the solar array to our electrical service. Okay. And that allows us to feed back into the electrical grid.
Okay. Now, this project here and in the other buildings wasn't just about solar panels.
Correct.
It was also about heating. So we're going to take a quick walk through to show some of the heat pumps that were installed in Sterling Village.
Yes. And we have car chargers on the way as well.
And that too, we're going to get into that.
Very good.
So we quickly stepped into the inside control area of Sterling Village, and we're now in the boiler room.
Yes.
So Jim, why don't you explain to Councilman Espinoza and myself the significance of this room?
This is where all of the heat for the building heat, comfort in the apartments is generated.
Yeah.
So this installation originally was 8 smaller boilers that would run in tandem. And unfortunately, we received news about 2 years ago that they were no longer in production.
Okay.
And we did start to run into some issues with part scarcity.
So when something like that's not in production, obviously it's just like if you own a car, if they're not making a car, that means there's no parts. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, they were not that old, but we still ran into this issue, whether the manufacturer went out of business or what have you. And so we were in the middle of this direct install and energy savings program, and we brought up the need for these new boilers. These boilers were installed under the direct install program through PSE&G at a greatly incentivized cost as part of the overall project. And by switching to high efficiency condensing boilers, these are about 96% efficient, these boilers, we were able to achieve a greater incentive and rebate through the utility.
So instead of costing a couple $100,000, it was really, I think it was like under $30,000 for a $250,000 setup.
It's an amazing discount. It's a
Yeah.
70% discount, I believe.
Yeah, which doesn't happen too often. I think most general people, if they can get a 70% discount on anything, wherever they are, they would take it. But like you said, this will be added comfort to the residents that are here. And in theory, we should get 15 years or longer out of this.
I should hope so, yes.
Yeah.
These are relatively new. How long did it take to install them?
Surprisingly, it took about 3 days to get this first boiler up and running so that we would have heat for the laundromat.
Yeah.
And this was in September. So it took another week to get the entire array of 4 boilers in. And that includes a crane hoist, which installed a stainless steel liner in the chimney.
Okay.
So the turnaround time on the project was very good.
Pretty good. And that's one of the tricky things, Councilman, as you know, is that when you have active residents in a building, you've got to supply heat and hot water. So that's why they're very cognizant of that when they're doing the reinstall.
Yes, I will say it was a pleasure to work with the contractor on this project.
Have we seen return of investments with installing these yet, or?
Have we seen them yet? No. But will we? Yes, most definitely. You're running fewer, more efficient boilers to do the same job.
We will be running that analysis once the bills come in and everything, when everything's totally operational. We should see a significant drop in the
This is really the first heating season that we're going through with these new boilers.
Correct.
Yeah. So with that, we're going to finish up here at Sterling Village, and we're going to go over to the senior center now.
Yes.
All right, we went from Worth in the boiler room over at Sterling Village, so now we're back out here in the parking lot. Behind us is both the senior center and JFK Library. So what transpires, or what is going to transpire over at the senior center?
Very similar installation to our other buildings, where we are having a solar array installed and activated on the rooftop of the senior center. That will be tied directly into the aforementioned switchgear that's in the mechanical room here. Again, it's a great benefit in that all the energy usage that we do put out through this building will offset to the tune of about 50% for this building, just based on the panels.
Each building, I think, has a certain percentage what was projected.
And it does vary given the surface area of the roof and the installation that we decided to move ahead with. There's no canopy here, which would increase that, but there is a canopy, as we'll say, over at JFK Library.
So, but it's not just the solar here. Eventually, the other aspects that we're going to take care of, I think, was some ground AC units.
Yes, so heating and air conditioning, especially today, is a huge usage of electricity. Through the direct install, we're able to replace what we call package units, which are heat and air conditioning, that are located behind the building. Again, a higher efficiency unit, and the benefit, of course, being new equipment at a discounted rate now with a warranty to move us forward into the next decade.
it was actually cheaper to go this route than actually find contractors to come in and actually fix the units.
It's getting to be that way, yes.
Yeah. Councilman, do you have a question?
Jim, how many facilities have solar panels now, and how many are predicted for 2025?
So right now, the active solar installations are at the DPW building and the sewers garage. In 2025, everything that we discuss in this will be active. So that will be Sterling Village, the Senior Center, JFK Library, Westergaard Library, Town Hall, Public Safety Building.
That's great. So for the residents that don't know how solar works, how does that energy come in? Where do we store it? Do we resell?
So it's a great question. When the sun is shining, the photovoltaic panels are collecting that energy, converting it through the use of a solar inverter and transformer, and supplying that back to either the grid or the building itself where it's being generated at. Specifically on this side of Route 18, most of the energy produced will be utilized at the site where it's produced. Across the street, however, especially at the DPW canopy, we will be using what's called a net zero meter, which will allow us to sell that energy that's overproduced back to the grid.
Which is good news. And well, let's finish and we could talk about the other buildings as we're walking along. So what is Kennedy Library going to have here other than a rooftop and the canopy array?
So Kennedy Library was actually one of the first direct install projects we did under the Energy Savings Plan. And it included the replacement of both hot water boilers. And we just installed a new air conditioning chiller unit.
I know the employees and the patrons are going to love that once it's done.
Yes.
For next summer.
This is in conjunction with additional controls for the building, and I do anticipate our comfort level, again, moving into that next decade, will be much greater than in the past.
And as you can see with the canopy in the background at night, there's new lighting up underneath, and then also there's a conduit for, Councilman, as you know, and your field security cameras.
Yep.
So that are going to eventually be installed.
Yes.
So I think right now we're going to walk over to our lovely community center, and we're going to go up to the massive roof array of our community center. So let's go take a walk over there.
Very good.
Well, I want to thank Councilman Espinoza to suggest us come to the roof of our beautiful community center to catch some rays up here.
Yeah, well,
and as you can see in the background where we are on top of the roof, this is going to catch a lot of rays, sun rays up here. So Jim, tell us what the significance of this very large setup up here.
The YMCA uses a lot of power.
Yes.
We have pool pumps and heaters running. The air conditioning system and dehumidification system are constantly running here, and this is a large offset to that energy usage. This building, correct me if I'm wrong, was engineered with solar in mind.
Yeah, that's one of the smart things we did when we were an architectural design councilman, is that we didn't have the money to install solar while it was being constructed, but we knew someday that we wanted solar, so they made sure architecturally and structural engineering that it could handle solar, and that was at current technology. Now the technology has moved so quickly that these panels are like only 1.5 inches thick, where they used to be this thick.
They have made drastic advancements in the last 20 years of photovoltaic panels.
Yeah, that was the first thing I noticed, that these solar panels are very close to the roof, and also very low profile. It's great.
You wouldn't even know up here that there is solar on this building. And behind us, on the elevation, there's solar on top of where the swim area is, and solar on top of where the gym is.
Yes, all the standing seam metal roofs also have a solar installation on them.
Yeah, so that was one of the big things that we originally wanted up here. But you could talk about DPW, how when that was installed, we got a federal grant back then through the senators and Congressman Pallone. They have they're very large, big solar panels about this thick, and they're held down by cinder blocks.
Yes, that installation is archaic compared to what we're seeing today. They're not done like that anymore.
And the significance of that, we can't take those panels off at least for another 3 years until the life cycle is finished. But, because we would love to put the more efficient ones up,
Absolutely.
but because of the way the structuring was through the grant, we have to keep those up there.
Yep.
So as part of this project, there's going to be 28 charging stations that are going to be installed throughout the town on government properties. The ones currently out at JFK Library, we're expecting to have them operational sometime in February. We're just waiting for the sign off from the state BPU. A lot of folks have been asking us about, there's 2 that are down at the community center. Currently we have 6, which was originally installed 5 years ago. All those are going to get replaced as part of this with the new modern mid-level charging stations there. And we're going to have approximately 12 out there. So come April, May, we're going to be digging up the sidewalk there to install the new conduit. There will be a minimum of 2 hour. You can use it for 2 hours, and anything over 2 hours, there'll be a charge for that, whatever the going rate of electricity is that day. So that all that mechanics has to be worked out because we're going to have a company run that. And then we're going to have charging stations at the other government complex, Westergaard, over at Town Hall. So that's all going to be applicable. One of the biggest problems that we have with the charging stations over at the community center is that folks have a tendency of leaving their car there the whole day and hogging the space. So what'll end up happening is you'll get 2 hours free, and then after that, you'll have to sign up for the program, and then you'll be charged anything after that. Because the whole idea is not to have somebody park their car overnight or there and then leave and go to work, and that's evidently what's been happening. It's not fair to everybody who wants to have a charge. So, with all the additional charging stations going to be throughout the town, that should add some more availability. So it'll be a lot quicker charge than what we have now. So just be patient. So we're almost there. Like I said, some are going to be coming online in February, and then the balance should be done by June next year. And everything is contingent with the state BPU examining it first. So Jim, we're talking, since we're on top of the roof, why don't we talk about some of the other buildings, and the good folks at PCTV will backfill that in. So let's talk a little bit about the DPW yard.
The DPW yard is a standalone installation that's going on our canopy that covers our trucks and equipment.
So explain what a standalone installation is.
A standalone installation meaning that it doesn't really power a building. It's an installation that we put specifically to sell energy back to the utility. I feel that'll be a great investment for the township and the utility both.
Well, the significance of that was the council at the time and myself thought with all the very expensive equipment we had out in the elements that instead of building a building, we just build a large canopy so at least it can get under the real nasty weather. And that was also engineered at the time for potential solar if we ever received a grant.
Yes, the canopies are built specifically with solar installations in mind, and they have been a boon to have, protecting the equipment and to serve our operation. They really have been.
So now we move back from DPW. On top of the public works buildings, we have the old setups. We want to talk a little bit about that.
So the old setups are, to keep this in layman's terms, they are an aged setup where we are involved in the SREC program. So we do collect solar credits that we sell, and they are bought up by a utility in terms to fulfill their requirement to the government on solar production.
And they were installed in 2011.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're up almost to the terminus of their life cycle there.
Yeah.
And
one of the challenges we have up there now, if you have a leak on the roof, you have to take these big monstrosity panels off, lower them by a crane, and then fix whatever you have to do on the roof. And then whereas the ones right here that we see, if you see, there's such a low profile, and they're put together with plastic brackets.
Yep.
Right here.
Yeah, they're much improved, much better for the roof. And if you actually do look, every single installation has another strip of EPDM underneath the installation to protect the existing roof even more. We don't have that at the old DPW.
Yeah.
The old DPW, the roof was patched and the solar panels were put on, and it's gotten us this far, but we are approaching the end
Well,
of the
at
life.
the time, Councilman, the roof was only like 5 or 6 years
Yeah.
old. So it's no different like if you install solar on your own home. Yeah, it depends upon how many years or life expectancy of your own roof before they would do something.
Absolutely.
Like that. Councilman, you had a question about the police headquarters, the microgrid?
Yes. So I hear that we're getting a microgrid.
Yes.
Installed. I'm very excited about this. I work in IT. I've dealt with diesel generators that give us X amount of days for in case a disaster happens. I hear now we're going to have a microgrid that's going to charge up the battery.
Absolutely. That's my favorite part of the project, actually. So the microgrid, in its most basic concept, is a giant battery which will supply power to the public safety building and town hall in the event of a power outage. That battery is fed by two different sources: the solar installation that's going on town hall and the police canopy, and the diesel generator, which would be our tertiary or third power source. With all these components combined, we will be able to run the buildings off of the main grid for up to 7 days.
Oh, that's great.
It's dependent on demand, electricity demand, but we made those calculations based on peak demand over the last couple of years, so it should be somewhat accurate.
That's life-saving.
Yes, during Sandy, and the mayor
Yep.
can attest to this, we all had issues with fuel delivery. And so our trucks and our equipment, they all run on diesel. So in order to sacrifice that diesel for the generators has some impact to the operation, cleanup operations, public safety operations during bad storms. And that was a large part of the motivation of looking into the microgrid. Another benefit is as the microgrid operates and the battery is charged and the weather is decent, we are able to use that battery and the software that will handle it to sell electricity back to the grid at peak rates. So at the periods of highest demand in the summers when we're being warned about brownouts and such, we'll be able to sell electricity down from the battery back to the grid.
As we reserve our 7 days, we resell the rest.
Yes, and you can establish thresholds on the battery down to what you choose to allow it to discharge to. So you're never going to cut off your nose to spite your face, so to speak. You can still keep that functionality where the battery will be there to back up the building.
Well, that's great news.
Well, it's just not police headquarters, but it feeds the regular town hall also.
Absolutely. So the councilman and I were talking, this also has great ramifications for the IT component. So while most of our important systems are backed up with smaller UPS systems or universal power supply, this battery backup will be a seamless transfer of power for any electronic that's in the building. That includes HVAC controls, PCs that might not be covered by a UPS, et cetera.
And that's significant because that plays into the renovation of remodeling our 911 call center.
Yes.
Because that relies on backup battery, for emergency, because you need it.
And we are working with the police to build redundancy upon redundancies to maintain 911 and dispatch functionality through whatever crises or power crises that we can imagine.
So this is a whole series of planning that went over the last 8 to 10 years that we knew that we were eventually going to have our own standalone frequency when the new FCC regulations came out. And by us installing the radio system and the new towers, it coincided with us with the solar install project, which is all going to migrate together seamlessly between the buildings with the power, the IT element, and everything. So to me, as the mayor, this is something that we thought about like almost a decade ago, and we wondered if we were ever going to get to accomplishing it, but we're almost there. We're about maybe 6 months away from actually finishing everything out. And I argue to say that we're probably one of the few towns in the state of New Jersey can actually say that everything's totally integrated between 911 call center, the solar, the backup microgrids, and everything else. Because when I was the mayor during Hurricane Sandy, I could always remember some of the families coming in begging for power because they had no power because they were cold, because it was the end of October going into November. And they were saying, well, you have power here, but what they didn't realize is that we were on backup generator for 7 days. And so we were fully operational. We had to be filled. And so I get it, I understand, and I distinctly remember, Kennedy Library was on backup generator. People had to come over there to use the strips that we set up for people to charge their cell phones and their laptops so they could keep in communication with their family members. Mm-hmm. So it really does become a security issue and a life or death situation. So I'm just so glad to see that the council members actually voted in favor of this. And the best part about all this solar that we're installing, the $25 million project and the heating efficiency, it's only going to cost the taxpayers $900,000. And that was one of the things that we were getting criticized. Well, Mayor, why don't you, about 10 years ago, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I said, because we don't have the money. And Piscataway government, the way we run, we pick and choose where we could save monies, and we waited around long enough, and I was fortunate enough to work with a lot of mayors nationally, and we, during the Deficit Reduction Act that was signed into law by President Biden, we were able to get the tax credits to do this, and if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have been able to do it.
Absolutely.
So I thank both our United States senators and obviously Frank Pallone and President Biden for signing that law, because now towns and cities were able to take advantage of the tax credits to make it economical for us to install this, to save energy and lower the overall cost of the taxpayers, the operations of which in a lot of cases are 24/7. And this I believe will be one of the game changers for us here in the municipality for years to come. It'll long outlive our lives here, and we're fortunate enough to replace a lot of things that I thought we would never be able to do.
Yeah, it's a boon.
No,
it actually is. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank Councilman Espinoza for braving the cold weather here up on the roof of the community center, and Jim Ferratti, who came up with a nice warm sweater looking.
I have my Christmas sweater on. Thank you.
Assistant Director of Public Works. So we're going to try to get off the roof before it gets dark.